Um, I have a quiz tomorrow on these subjects,
Okay.
which is chatted to you. So if we could just go over all those, that'd be great.
Okay. Slope-intercept form is what? What's the general equation?
I think that's y equals mx plus b.
What's m?
The slope.
And what's b?
B is the y-intercept.
So if I said y equals x over 2 minus 3, slope is what?
So the slope is 2, or I guess 1 over 2.
1/2. Different than
1/2.
2. Yeah.
Yeah. And you start at -3.
Well, right. The slope in other words, the y-intercept is minus 3. So
Right.
I start there. You're right. Is the slope of 1/2 steeper or flatter than a slope of 1?
Steeper.
Flatter.
Flatter.
Uh-huh. Let's go over that.
Okay, yeah, because you're going over 2 and up 1.
Yeah. Give
Instead
me
of up
approximate numbers for the following slopes. What's that slope?
Just like guessing.
Uh-huh.
I guess that could be 1/2.
Plus 1. In other words, I go up the same amount I go over. That's
Okay.
about a 45-degree angle. So I was going for a 45-degree angle. Okay? So if that's plus 1, what is that?
That's plus 2.
What is that?
Is that -1 or?
No, that's plus. In other words,
Oh, plus 1/2.
Right. Positive slopes between 0 and 1 are between the slope that is 45-degree line and what's this slope here? It's meant
1/4.
No, it meant to be a flat line. What's the slope of the x-axis?
0.
Correct. What is this slope right there?
3.
And what is this slope that's a vertical line?
That would also be 0. Or 1. That would just be, infinity.
Uh-huh. In other words, the steeper you get, the higher it goes. When you said 3, I would have said 10, because we've got to get from this number to infinity just between in this little area here. So
Yeah.
it gets steep pretty quick. Okay?
Yeah.
What is this slope?
That's -1.
What is that slope?
-2.
And that slope.
-1/2.
All right. That's good to be able to recognize what slopes are approximately.
Mm-hmm.
So, as long as the equation is given to you in slope-intercept format, then we can create all kinds of problems. For example, they give you 2 out of the 3 pieces of information you need to know. In other words, every line can be determined by 2 points, 2 points determine a line, or slope and 1 point. If I give you 2 points, there's only one line that can be determined by those 2 points.
Right.
Or if I give you 1 point and a slope, there's only one line that can be determined. So those are the nature of the problems when we talk about the y or slope-intercept format. So let me give you 2 points first of all. Give me the equation of this line.
Okay. So first I'll figure out the slope. And then, so to figure out the slope, you do 7 minus 3 over 4 minus 2, right?
That's correct. The slope is the difference in the y's over the difference in the x's. Or, the more complicated way that they put in the textbooks is this. But notice that it's just the difference in the y's over the difference in the x's. That's rise over run.
Okay.
So what's the slope here?
So that's 4 over 2, or 2 over 1.
So the slope is 2. Now that we have the slope, we can say that y equals 2x plus b. And if I have 1 point, and I actually have 2 points, we'll take the smaller point, 2 comma 3.
You can just put 3 in there, or?
Yeah, in other words, we can substitute for x and y and solve for b, because we still don't know b yet. We don't have the equation of the line until we solve for b. Okay? So in order to solve for b, let's plug that point into this equation. So what do I have?
So 3 equals 2 times 2 plus b. I guess that'd be -1 then.
So now the specific equation of the line is y equals what?
Y equals 2 b, or 2x plus b, or plus -1, or -1, I guess.
Right. So we go from the general equation of the line to a halfway equation of the line to a final equation of the line. Okay? And I can get this final equation if you give me 2 points, or if you give me slope and 1 point. In other words, let me create another problem.
Because then you can just make another point, or you can find the other point.
Well, 2 points determine a line, and so does slope and 1 point. So if I say slope is -2, and 1 point on the line is 4 comma 6, give me the equation of that line. So here's the general equation. And I know slope is -2, so I can put that in there. Now solve for b.
Okay, so it would be 6 equals -2 times 4, so -8.
What's b equal to?
I'm not very good with negatives.
Well, then we need to work on it.
It'd be 2, or?
Okay, let's first...
Oh, wait, no. What am I talking about? It would be...
Let me give you a helpful hint. When I'm solving equations, all I want to do is get b all by itself. So I want to move that to the other side. Well, right now, what they teach you in school is to add 8 to both sides. The way I do it, if I want to move that to the other side, I just do it and change its sign. So if I'm going to move the minus 8 to the other side, it's going to be 6 plus 8. So we've solved for B.
Oh, okay.
Okay? So now I can go back, and instead of having a half specific equation, I can make a totally specific equation. Y equals 2x plus 14. There's the equation of that line. Now, let's go back a moment. So, using nothing but slope-intercept format, we can come up with the equation of the line if you give me 2 points or if you give me slope and 1 point. I need 2 pieces of information, and I can always come up with the equation of the line. Let's talk about point-slope format. What is that?
Point slope. Point slope is
Standard
slope.
form. Notice that in your notes here we have slope-intercept form, which we just covered. I want to cover point-slope form next.
Yeah, that's so it's slope times x minus x1 or
It looks
y
a
minus
little.
y1.
It looks a little different than the other. But notice where this comes from. This is slope, point slope format.
Okay.
There's a reason it's called point slope. Is because if you have just point slope, you can plug it directly into this and don't have to worry about this B. But let me give you a hint for memorizing this. What is slope equal to? Rise over run. Well, what's the rise? Y minus y sub 1. What's the run? X minus x sub 1. So that leads to this. See that? So if you ever have a problem remembering the general form of the point-slope form of this equation, it's basically just slope is rise over run. Only instead of y2 minus y1, we have y minus y1. Why? Because we only have 1 point. So to come up with this equation that we just did using slope-intercept, let's use point-slope. And I'll show you that it's a little quicker. We don't have to worry about figuring out B. So we plug in y sub 1. What is y sub 1?
So are we using the same coordinates?
Yeah.
The same point. Okay. So that would be 6.
Slope is minus 2.
2.
What's x sub 1?
And that would be 4.
I'm done. There's our equation. Now, that's going to be the same equation as we got doing it the other way. In other words, if I distribute this, I get minus 2x plus 8. Then if I add 6 to both sides, I get y equals minus 2x plus 14. So I get the same equation no matter how I do it. The question is what does the question ask? If the question says put it in point-slope format, then I'm done when I get to that step right there. If the question says put it into slope-intercept format, then I got to get it into this format, which means I have to distribute it and solve it.
Okay.
So if I have to get it into slope-intercept format, I have 2 ways to do it. I can do it by starting by point slope, which gives me the equation quicker, but then I have to convert this equation to slope-intercept format. Or I can work in slope-intercept format the whole way and solve for B. Either way works. Okay? But point slope, the reason it's named that is because you have a point and a slope, and that's all you have.
Okay.
Standard format. Standard format is where you have your x and y on one side, and you have your constant on the other. For example, if you have an equation like this, that's standard format. Notice that it's not in slope-intercept format and it's not in point-slope format. So standard is your x and y are on the same side, x first, the numbers on the other side.
Okay. So, but that, I feel that seems kind of like what would you be trying to figure out there?
Well, the beauty of standard format is that if you have two equations and two variables, in other words, right now, if I gave you that equation, that's the equation of the line, but there's an infinite number of solutions for x and y.
Right.
Well, let me give you a second equation. X plus 3y equals 2. Now, between these two equations, I can solve for x and y because I now have two equations and two variables, and the easiest way to solve these is by elimination. So having them in standard format is very useful.
So you would just solve each problem over and over again, or?
No, I would just add the two equations.
Oh.
In other words,
Okay.
if I have a plus b equals c, and I have x plus y equals z, I can add those two. So I have
So
a
it'd be
plus x
3x.
plus b plus y equals c plus z. I can also subtract them. So you
Okay.
can always add or subtract equations. Well,
So would
if
this one be 3x, I guess, plus y?
no, the y's eliminate. That's why it's
okay.
called elimination,
Okay.
because we're eliminating a variable.
Right. Equals 12. Okay.
Once you solve for one variable, you can go back in and plug it in
Okay,
solve
cool.
for the other one. But that's the beauty of the standard format, is it's the best format for solving by elimination. Notice that if one of these equations was this, not in standard format, same equation, I probably wouldn't use elimination to solve this. I would use substitution. In other words, wherever I found x in the first equation, I'm going to substitute 2 minus 3y. So I would do 2 times 2 minus 3y minus 3y equals 10. Now I have one variable, one equation. I can solve for y. Once I've solved for y, I'll know what x is.
Okay.
So the method you choose to solve simultaneous equation is frequently dependent on how your equations are given to you. If both equations are given to you in standard format, then I'm going to say always use elimination. If one of the equations is given to you as a variable, all solved, use substitution. If I give you these two equations, you're just going to plug in 5 for y and solve for x. So there's a need for all three of these formats. Slope-intercept is terrific if you have to graph it, because you know exactly where to start. You know how to define your slope, so that makes it really easy to graph. Point slope is terrific for if you have a point and a slope for coming up with the graph. Standard format is also really easy to graph. What is the x-intercept? Here, let me change the numbers. What is the x-intercept?
The x-intercept would be, wait.
It's important to understand.
Oh, so it's just kind of backwards, or?
Well, the x-intercept is always where y equals 0, right?
Right.
And the y-intercept is always where x equals 0. So to find the x-intercept, let's just let y equal 0. What do we get? 3x equal 12, x equal 4. There's the x-intercept. The equation goes through that point.
Wait.
To find the y-intercept, let's let x equal 0. Now we have minus 2y equals 12, so y equals minus 6. There's the y-intercept. Now I can graph it real easily. 2 points is all you need to graph a line. So if you're given the line, or if you're given the equation in standard format, it's the easiest to graph because it's real easy coming up with the x-intercept, it's real easy coming up with the y-intercept, and you just connect the dots.
Okay.
Okay? If I want to graph the same equation, but in slope-intercept format, so solve this for me in slope-intercept format. In other words, if the question was to graph this, and I didn't know about the x-intercept and the y-intercept, how would you graph it? You'd put it in slope-intercept format. How do we do that?
Put that in. So,
what we're looking for is y equals something. So it's the same as saying solve this equation for y.
okay. So, then, so, well then, would you just subtract, 3x from both sides, or?
Yep. And I'm going to put it in.
Sides,
I'm going to put it in front because I want to get close to y slope-intercept format.
Okay.
Okay.
And then you would divide by -2.
Every term, including this one. So now you have y equals 3/2 x minus 6. So now graph that. You start at minus 6, and you have a slope of 3/2, meaning I go up 3 over 2. So I end up with that same exact line. The only difference is I graphed it a different way by finding the y-intercept first and then the slope. Personally, I like graphing it easier if I have an x and y-intercept. I don't have to worry about counting up 3 and over 2. If I have an x and y-intercept, all I have to do is connect the two lines and draw a straight line, and there's my graph.
Yeah, I find that easier too.
Yeah.
So those are just two options?
Well, it depends on how the function is given to you. In other words, if it's given to us like this, it's far easier to just graph the x and y-intercepts and connect it, as opposed to solving this equation for y, getting it into slope-intercept format, and then graphing it. So it just depends. If I give you this equation here, what's the easiest way to graph that?
Well, I would do start at -1, and then go up 3 and over 1, because it always has a 1 underneath, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly right. In other words, because I gave it to you in slope-intercept format, that was the easiest way to graph it.
Right.
But
I'm the most comfortable with slope-intercept as well.
Most people are, because that's what everybody's taught first.
Okay.
But notice that if I wanted, I could turn this into standard format. Now figure out the x-intercept by setting that equal to 0. Figure out the y-intercept by setting that equal to 0. There's my 2 points, and I connect them. And I end up with the same line. So it really depends on how you're given the problem, or how you're given the function, I should say. Because all of these are the same function. It's just in different formats. We've talked about the three formats. We have slope-intercept, we have point-slope, and we have standard. So you can take the same function and put it into all three formats if you want.
Okay.
Okay? So it really comes down to the function you're looking at. So we've covered that, and graphing of it. So let's do a couple of other problems that you're liable to get. Let me make some problems up here. And they usually give you 2 out of 3 things. So if I could say slope is -1/2 and y-intercept is -10, what's the equation of that line?
The equation would be y equals 1/2 x plus 10.
-1/2 x minus 10. See why?
Okay, yeah, because it's -10.
Yeah. In other words, the general format is this, but m is a minus number and b is a minus number.
Okay.
Okay? So that's one kind of question you're going to get. Actually, you won't get that one because that's too simple. The kind you'll get would be, let's do one of these again, I'll make it a little harder. I'm going to give you 2 points, and I want the equation of this line.
Okay, so this one would be, let's see,
Always figure the slope first. That's always your first task.
So, it'd be 3 over -1.
What is 1 minus a -2?
Oh, it's actually 3 over 3 then. So 1.
Whenever you're doing math like that, it's useful to picture the number line. What we want is the distance between those 2 points.
Right.
So you can you can do it arithmetically like this, like I did it, and turn it into a 1 plus 2. Or you can even do it the other way. And you can say, what's -2 minus a +1? Well, that's -3. But the key thing is, what is the distance between those 2 points? And it's 3.
Okay.
Okay? So the slope is 1. Now we have slope and 2 points.
Right.
So if it was me, and I was I'm very familiar with all 3 of these formats, the one that's easiest to use at this point is point slope. Because what do I have? I have a slope and I have 2 points. I only need one of them. So let's use point slope to come up with this equation.
So this will be y minus, and we can just choose any point, right?
Either one.
Either one, okay. So I'll do 6.
I would do this one also because they're both positive numbers.
Yeah. Equals 1 times x minus 1.
Now, that can be a final answer. It depends on the question. If the question was, give it to me in the slope-intercept format, now what?
Well,
in other words,
now,
that would be in point-slope format. And that would be
Right.
your final answer. But if I said give it to me in slope-intercept format, what's the final answer?
It would be y equals 1x plus, oh, wait. Let me look at my notes.
Okay, we're moving the minus 6 to the other side, so we're going to just change its sign. So make it a plus 6.
So
What's
7.
No.
Or 5.
What's negative 1 plus 6? It's plus 5. So there's our equation in slope-intercept format. Same thing as the same equation as point slope, it just looks a little different. In other words, this equation's the same as this equation. Now give me that equation in standard format.
Okay, in standard format, that would be, so that would be 1x plus 6y equals...
Notice that I worked off of this. So all I have to do to get this in standard format is move the x over to the other side.
Oh, okay.
And I put it in front because that's standard format. It's x and y, not y and x. So standard format, you have your x and your y on the left side and the number on the right.
But what happened? Oh, okay. That's why it equals 5, because negative 1 plus 6. Okay.
Yeah. In other words, I didn't work on this. I could have. I could have started with that to put it in standard. I still have to move the x to the other side and move the minus 6 to the right side. So I get to here regardless.
Okay.
So you can, as long as you can swap between any of the formats, that's important.
Okay.
All right. Now the next thing you learn, or the questions you're going to get asked, are give me the equation of the line that is parallel to this line and has a y-intercept of plus 3.
That is parallel. Oh, I know. I think I remember how to... Well, if it's parallel, then it'll have the same slope.
Exactly.
So then you would just do this in point or slope-intercept form, and you would find the slope from the other equation.
Exactly. So we know the slope is 6. So what's my equation?
Oh, right, yeah. So 6x plus 3.
Exactly. Okay. And the other kind of questions you would get would be, give me the equation of the line that is perpendicular to this and goes through the point 2, 3.
Perpendicular. Okay.
So what's the slope of perpendicular lines equal to? In other words,
1,
if
isn't it?
there's the slope of 6, there's
Right.
a perpendicular line, and they always have a similar relationship.
Isn't it just negative 6?
It's the negative reciprocal. If this is 6, this is negative 1/6.
Oh, negative 1/6.
It's
Okay.
the negative reciprocal.
So
So,
parallel the same slope,
and perpendicular is negative reciprocal, negative 1/6. So now I have slope, 1 point. Give me the equation, and clearly the easiest thing to use at this point is point slope format. Because I have exactly 1 point and I have a slope.
Wait, sorry. For what?
Okay,
notes.
so the original question was, give me the equation of a line that has a perpendicular that's perpendicular to this line.
Oh, okay.
And it goes through this point, 2, 3. So the first thing we figured out was the slope of our new line has to be negative 1/6, and it goes through this point. So we have a point and we have a slope. So let's use point-slope format.
Okay. So then, yeah, it would be y minus 3 equals negative 1/6 times x minus 2.
Now give me that answer in slope-intercept format.
So this would be y equals negative 1/6 x plus plus 3, or
what's negative 1/6? What's negative 1/6 times negative 2?
Oh, that's okay.
In other words, our first step is to distribute this negative 1/6 before we move this plus 3 over.
Okay. Negative 1/6.
So let's back up. Hold on. Let me back up here. Let's leave that 3 over there because that's not really our first step. Our first step is we're going to use PEMDAS. So the first thing we're going to do is get rid of these parentheses. What's negative 1/6 times negative 2?
It'd be 2/12.
Multiply numerators, multiply denominators.
Oh, so 6. So negative, or 2/6. 2 times 1. Yeah.
Which equals 1/3. Okay. So we get that far. We're still not in slope-intercept format. The only thing I need to do is move the 3 over. So now y equals negative 1/6 x plus what?
1/3.
Got to move this 3 over.
Oh, wait. So so we're trying to find the.
I'm trying to put this into slope-intercept format. In order to put it into slope-intercept format, I have to solve it for y.
Okay. Yeah. So then plus 3 on both sides. Oh, but wait. What happened to the negative 1/6?
Still there.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
All I did was add the 3 to this plus 1/3.
Okay.
Okay. So I took our equation that was in slope-intercept, or I'm sorry, was in point-slope format, and I translated it to slope-intercept format by just solving for y. Okay. Give me this in standard format.
Okay. In standard format, that would be well, you would just use the same points from above, right?
Almost. First of all, we want to make sure we have y and x on the left side and all numbers on the right. So how do I do that?
You would divide by 1/6.
No, not yet. Let's move the x on the other side. So I have 1/6 x plus y equals 3 1/3. So that's almost standard format. It's very close to standard format. The only thing that standard format dictates is that you don't have any fractions. So what do I have to do to this to get rid of all my fractions? Notice 10/3.
Yeah. So you have to times or multiply both sides by 6 and then both sides by 3.
Exactly. Just by 6. Notice that when I multiply both sides by 6, That's what the left side becomes. Right side becomes that.
Okay.
Gets rid of the 3 automatically because I multiply both sides by 6. So this is standard format. This is not.
Okay.
In other words, standard format has to be converted so that everything's an integer. Can't have any fractions at all. Had this been 10/7, convert it to standard format. In other words, take this equation and convert it to standard format.
Right. Well, you do the same thing. You would multiply
Now,
both
if I
sides
multiplied by 6, that wouldn't get rid of the fraction over here.
Oh, okay. So then multiply both sides by 7.
That wouldn't get rid of this fraction. How about if I multiply both sides by the common denominator, 42?
Okay.
That gives me 7x here plus 42y equals 60. 60. Remember, I'm multiplying both sides by 42. This is now standard format. It's the only way to get rid of the fractions was to multiply everything by 42, the common denominator.
Okay.
Okay? So, let's see, what else do we have? That covers those 3 subjects pretty well. You have any problems at all, specific problems that you've been given?
No, it's just prepare for the quiz.
I know, but in order to prepare for the quiz, surely you must have some kind of problems they've given you. I can find another one in my book if you like.
Yeah, she just said study because we did like a worksheet in class today.
Okay. Well, the problem with me bringing the problems to the session is that I'm not sure I'm bringing the problems that you've been studying.
Oh, wait, actually I might be able to get one.
If you can find problems, it's far better for you to bring problems than me, because that ensures that we're doing the right kind of problem. I can speculate as to what kind of problems you're doing, but that's all I can do is speculate.
Okay, actually, yeah, I found some.
Good.
I found a thing she posted a couple of nights ago. There's 5 problems. Okay.
Okay.
So let's see. So 2.
Go ahead and read it out loud, and I'll try to write as best as I can.
Okay. So write down 4y equals 6 plus 5x, and we have to find the slope. Give its x-intercept and give its y-intercept.
Okay. What's the best format to put this in to solve for slope?
Solve for slope. Well, this already looks like it's almost in points.
Almost, but not really. It's not in slope-intercept format.
Slope-intercept.
How would we get it in slope-intercept format? So all we need is y equals something. So
right,
we
so
just
we
have to
just
isolate
divide by
y.
4.
Okay, so now we got this. What's the slope?
So the slope is 6/4.
No. Slope's always the number in front of the x.
Oh.
In other words, I didn't really put it in slope-intercept format.
Right, so
Close.
it's 11/4.
No, 5/4. In other words, I got to switch these two things around to get it in slope-intercept format.
Oh,
And it's the coefficient of the x that's always the slope. So 5/4 is the slope.
okay.
Okay? Now, the best way to solve for the intercepts, to my thinking, is to put it in standard format. So what's standard format for this equation, starting with up there? Don't start with what we figured out in slope-intercept format. Start with this. It'll be much easier. Put it in standard format.
Okay, then A5.
Remember, standard format is to get all your x's and y's on the left, get nothing but
right.
numbers on the right.
Okay,
That's all we have to do. Put the x first.
Yeah, so we're minus 5x on both sides.
There's standard format. Very easy.
Oh, okay.
Just move
Oh,
the
yeah.
x and the y's to the left and leave the numbers on the right. Okay? Now the advantage of standard format is it's very easy to figure out your x-intercept and your y-intercept. Because what's true at the x-intercept? Y is equal to what?
4? Or wait, oh.
If I have a graph.
Y is equal to 6 divided by 4.
Well, what's y equal to at my x-intercepts here? I got two of them. This is the y-axis. This is the x-axis. What's y equal to at my x-intercepts?
I suppose 0.
Yes, that's a huge, important fact. X-intercepts, y equals 0. Y-intercepts, what's x equal to?
X would be 6,
No, right here, where I'm putting the x. That's the
Oh,
y-intercept.
0.
Exactly. So this is what's important. At your x-intercepts, y is 0. At your y-intercepts, x is 0.
Okay.
So
then, so y and x
and in order to
intercept
find
always going to be 0?
No, to find the x-intercept is all we do is make y 0. Makes it real easy.
Oh, okay.
So minus 5x plus 0 equals 6. So the x-intercept is 6 over 5, negative 6 over 5. What is my y-intercept?
Wait, where'd you get this? Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay.
To find the x-intercept, I substituted 0 for y. To find the y-intercept, I'm going to substitute 0 for x.
Right. So then it would be 4y equals 6.
Yep.
And then 6 divided by 6/4 is the y.
So there's your y-intercept, there's your x-intercept. So in order to solve this problem, we used two different formats. We put it into slope-intercept format. That was the easiest way to solve for slope. But the easiest way to solve for x and y intercepts was to put it in standard format.
Okay.
I think that that's the easiest way to solve for the... I guess once you have it in slope-intercept format, you can substitute 0 for x and know that the y-intercept is 6/4 immediately. But then if you substitute 0 for y, it's not so easy to solve for x. So to me, solving for your x and y intercepts is best done from standard format. It's real easy to do from standard format, as long as you remember that one key fact. The most important fact is that the x-intercept is where y equals 0, the y-intercept is where x equals 0.
Okay.
What's the next problem you have? Let's just keep doing them until we run out of time.
Okay. The next one, let me turn to it really fast. Next one is find an equation of the line satisfying the given conditions. And the conditions are: the line contains the points -3, 4, and 5, -4.
-3 and 4, and what
Yeah.
else?
And 5, -4.
Okay, so here they're giving us 2 points. So what's the first thing we always do as the first step in these problems?
Oh, yeah, find the slope.
Okay, what's the slope here?
Slope in this one is so this one would be 8 over 2. Yeah.
So we're either going to do it this way. But actually we can do it this way if we want. As long as you're consistent. You see the difference? You see the difference between these two? In other words, I can do this minus this over this minus this, or I can do this minus this over this minus that. So be consistent. So
that I did do that though. I did.
Which one did you do? Y2 minus Y1?
Yeah, I did.
So minus 4 minus a 4. All over 5 minus a minus 3. So what's the numerator?
-4 minus 4. I hate negatives.
Okay, let me give you a tip that you won't hate them anymore. The reason people hate this problem is because we have 2 dashes and they mean different things. This dash means negative. This dash means subtraction. So let's turn all subtraction problems into addition problems. In the same way we divide fractions. If I'm dividing 1/2 by 1/3, I never do that division. I always multiply 1/2 by the reciprocal of 1/3. Okay? So if we're going to do all division problems like that, let's do all subtraction problems by turning them into addition problems. Instead of that, to turn it into an addition problem, what we really have here is -4 minus a +4. So for me to turn this into an addition problem, I change the subtraction to an addition, and I change the sign on the number that's being subtracted. Now do that one, and it becomes a piece of cake.
Okay, yeah, -8.
See the difference? See how much easier it is if you turn a subtraction problem into an addition problem.
Yeah.
You never have a problem with it.
Okay, cool.
Always do it, whether there's variables, numbers, or anything else. So the numerator is -8. What's the denominator?
2.
Well, no. This is a subtraction problem. I'm going to turn it into an addition problem. There's the subtraction.
Oh, 5 minus -.
So I change that. I got to change that.
Right. 8.
-1 is the slope.
Okay.
So now that we have the slope, how should we get the equation? Did they ask what form they wanted it in? Was it?
No, it just says given or find an equation, find an equation.
And find an equation. So now that we have a slope and a point, what's the easiest one to use?
Well, that would be point slope form.
Yeah, so let's use point slope. So what's point slope?
It's y minus, in this case, well, I guess we'll do 4, positive 4.
You can use either point you want.
Right.
So that's fine. We'll use positive 4. Okay. What's our slope?
And then -1 times x minus -3, so +3.
There's our equation. You don't need to do anything more to it.
Okay.
If they would have said, give it to me in slope-intercept format, then I would have to solve for y.
Okay.
But as long as they said, give me the equation of the line, we just did. There it is.
Yep.
And I didn't have to solve for b.
Yeah. Because initially I was going to say we could do, because I'm just more comfortable with it.
You can do it in slope-intercept format. Let's just do it real quick in slope-intercept format.
Okay.
Just so you
But that's just kind of like adding on another step, isn't it?
It is adding on another step, but it depends. If you're more comfortable with it, then it's still maybe the better way to go. So if I say y equals mx plus b, I know what m is, so I know that it's y equals minus x plus b. So how do I solve that given 1 point?
I had this written down.
Put in 4 for y, minus 3 for x, solve for b.
Okay.
So I have 4 equals plus 3 plus b, therefore b is equal to 1. There's my equation, y equals minus x plus 1.
Okay.
So I can do it either way. It just forced me to solve for b. The advantage is that I end up with the equation in slope-intercept format, not in point-slope format. In other words, the way I did it, I ended up with y minus something equals x or some number times x minus something. So it all depends on what format you have to get it to as to what method you should use. But notice that everything gives you the same answer. Doesn't matter which method you use, you're always going to get to the same equation in the end.
Okay.
Okay? All right. Thomas, I will talk to you next time.
Yep. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.